Here we are once again on the Get Foxy show with Ms. Sara Gibbons. Sara, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, or this evening, since you are across the pond.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's my absolute pleasure to be here and to meet you and to share what I'm doing with your listeners.
You bet. Well, you are doing some great things out there. You are coaching folks how to really kind of recover from their divorce. And this is something that I know several of my listeners have gone through or are going through. This is something that just seems to be more common in our society, but it's so traumatic. Is this something that you kind of fell into? Did you always know that you were going to be coaching folks through this, or how did that come about for you?
Well, there's two parts to it, really. Yes, I went through a traumatic divorce of my own about 20 or 30 years ago now, actually. And that led me into counselling and natural therapies and having my own natural therapy centre and really changing my life completely from an office-based, government-based job to natural therapies and understanding personal development, spiritual development, that sort of thing. And that but it didn't particularly involve divorce. But then about 2 years ago, I was looking into really going into depth in the coaching that I was doing and just wanted to focus on something and decided to write a book. So I wrote a book on divorce, and part of the research, because it was something that I knew about, something I worked through myself. I've been working with people on their own personal development, but not specifically on divorce necessarily. And so I wrote the book. I've done some coaching, and really it's life skills, isn't it, that we're looking at, but with particular reference to people going through a traumatic life change, because obviously divorce is not what we enter marriage for, and we don't expect that. And it can happen for whatever reason, various reasons, all sorts of reasons, and it can happen early on, it can happen later life, and every single stage is traumatic for the people involved. So what I wanted to do was to really focus on how people could move through that trauma as quickly as possible, not shortcutting anything, but we don't have to stay in that misery. So yes, it's been a bit of a roundabout journey to get to the divorce, but it's always been a thread there since it was the trigger, if you like, for my own life change.
Your website is called helpyourselves.com, and self is CELL, cell, VES.
That's right.
So this is kind of interesting for me because as a healthcare practitioner, I have a good understanding of the human body and of cell development. But can you describe why you went with this name for your business and how it relates to transitioning from divorce?
Well, the reason my business is called Help Yourselves is because cells are the foundation of the body. If you like, the lowest common denominator, we have maybe 75 trillion cells in our body, and every single cell has trillions of activities going on all the time. So it's an amazing thing. There's like a universe in every cell. But so if our cells are healthy, then the tissues, the organs, the blood, the whole body is going to be healthy. And so that's the way I like to, I do health coaching as well. So that's the way I like to look at the body, rather than always going into the detail of the diagnosis, is to turn it around and say, well, if we can get healthy cells, we can have a healthy body. And what do the cells need in order to provide their magic? Because they will do that if we give them the resources they want to. So by helping yourselves, you're helping your health and your body. But of course, it has a double meaning in that we have to take responsibility for ourselves. So if we're prepared to help ourselves, then just by taking that step, the universe, or however you like to see it, will step in and support us.
You are speaking my language as a Chinese medicine practitioner. The idea that we take care of ourselves, our cells, the body is an integrated whole, at least from my medicine's perspective. So that's body, mind, and spirit. And so by treating one, we also have a big effect on the other. And so working on just creating a healthy environment for those cells to be nourished and do the work that they need to do can have a huge impact on the body.
Mm-hmm.
I
totally agree. And I just feel in a sense, it doesn't matter where you start, whether you start with diet or hydration or treatment or supplements or counselling or emotional or whatever, because that very first step is saying to yourself, to your body, I'm going to look after you. I'm prepared to put the effort in for my self-care. And that has repercussions throughout every aspect of your life. So you improve your health, your mood improves, you have more joy, you attract more into your life, the whole thing. I tend to think of it when I'm talking to clients who've got really stuck or really plummeting into the pit, if you like, that I see it like a bit like a helter-skelter. It's like they've been going round and down and down. So, well, if we can just stop that helter-skelter, take stock, put in some good foundations, then you will be able to find your way back up again to where you want to be.
This is something that, luckily, thank God for me, I've been married for, 15, 16 years now and haven't had to go through this. But the amount of trauma that I've seen in friends, family members, in patients, just because of this separation that they've had to go through in this divorce. I mean, this is traumatic stuff. And so it can really put you, in a massive pit of despair. So how does one really start to work their way through this, Sara?
Well, first of all, people have to get to the point where they want to do something about it. Now, everybody will say they want to, but maybe it's not. They don't feel that they're not quite ready to even think about moving from where they are. And it's not just because of anger or frustration or revenge. I mean, ultimately, it's fear. It's like having the rug pulled out from under you. Some people will have seen it coming. Some people will have initiated it, of course, but other people it will have come as a huge surprise. But in some ways, it doesn't really matter which situation it is, because as I explain in the book, I had conversation with friends and saying, well, who's had the worst situation? And I go, well, my husband left me for a younger, taller, slimmer, more beautiful woman. I just feel so inadequate. And somebody else said, well, my husband left me for an older, fatter woman. How does that make me feel? And this other guy said, well, my wife left me for another woman. And then this other guy said, well, my wife left me for nobody at all. And the sort of theme among all those different situations is that everybody's self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence has taken a huge blow. And that's really the bottom line, is like, am I worthy? Will I ever find love again? Can I rely on anybody? All of those questions. It's like the solidity of life has gone. And so for those people who are prepared to really put the work in and say, well, yes, my life is worth something. I want it to go where I want it to go. It is possible to build up that foundation again. But that's going back to where we started, in effect. Is we have to help ourselves. We have to put that foundation in. We have to say, I'm worth something. And because I'm worth something, I'm going to take the action. It might be baby steps. I might start to drink more water. I might add more greens to my diet, have a smoothie or something. I might take more exercise or fresh air or do some qigong or whatever. Whatever it is, you build those baby steps, which builds your self-worth, builds your self-esteem, and then the mood lifts from that pit of despair into hope, and then it moves up to actually, I'm back in control of my life. I can take it where I want to take it.
Wow, that is big stuff, Sara. I'd be curious to know how long people work with you, and how long does it take for them to move through all this to really see solid transition and transformation?
It varies hugely. I like to have people commit to a time span and pay up front for that time span, for the simple reason that by doing that, it makes them accountable, and then they can move very fast. And that would be a 12-week program. So you can move incredibly fast. And what I found quite interestingly is, since writing the book, and people who have read the book, they move even faster because they have, those basic concepts in place. They've already had a ponder about it, and then we can really go even faster. But yeah, you can do it in 12 weeks. You can do a lot in 12 weeks. And I'm not saying every problem is going to be solved, but what we want to do is to turn the situation around from being despair, feeling a victim, feeling life's against you, feeling there's no foundation, it's not safe, basically, to feeling back in control. And from that, of course, then the sky's the limit. You can do what you want.
This is something that I did some work with a gal by the name of Joanna Shakti a while ago. She was actually on my podcast last year. And one of the things she talked about was that women really have to feel safe. Just innately have to have that feeling of safety in order to start being in relationship with anyone else. So this sounds like it's a pretty key thing that you work with in order to get someone through your program. Am I correct?
So you're saying that somebody needs to feel safe within themselves. Is that what she was saying?
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I would probably put it in different words, but it's exactly the same concept, is that people, women, but anybody really, they really need to know themselves. And when you know yourself, it's like everything else starts to fall into place. So that, again, not to repeat it too much, but by taking the step of looking after yourself, whatever that might be, it starts a process. It starts a process where you begin to see, it's like lots of little light bulb moments and some big light bulb moments as well. And it's like you understand. So if somebody wants to be in a relationship, well, what is it they want from that relationship? Do they want to be, do they want some companionship? Do they want somebody they can talk through their day? Do they want somebody for a bit of fun, or that joking, or that whatever? And if you can do those things for yourself, then you don't need it from anybody else. But if there is somebody else that you can share it with, then it's the icing on the cake. But you're not going to, if that relationship doesn't work out, or somebody decides they want to do something different, and let's face it, yes, we can get married, but we can also decide we don't want to be married anymore. That's a feature of our society. And people have that right to choose and to change their minds. So if we're not holding on to somebody, because you won't hold on to somebody in the same way if you're confident in yourself, because that person can be incredibly important in your life, but they're not the be all and end all, because you are the most important person in your life. You're the person you spend the most time with. So it is about being safe, safe being the opposite of feeling the fear, but it's making yourself feel safe, finding that safety for yourself, finding that the person, you see, sometimes we want people to complete us. We want somebody to fill a hole, or we want somebody to, sometimes people say, oh, well, they don't really get me. But it's like, then you have to ask yourself, well, do I really get me? Because sometimes I can do things that I surprise myself. My screen's gone off, hasn't it?
That's okay. You'll come back. There you are.
I don't know quite what happened then.
Yeah, we're all good.
Okay. Yep. Is that okay? So you can see and hear me okay now?
Yep. I can see you, hear you. We're all good. A little bit of technical difficulty, but no worries. So yes, it's bringing this back to knowing yourself and having that clarity of knowing what you want in a relationship, and not only with someone else, but starting with yourself.
That's right. Yeah.
So I would assume that would take some pretty deep personal introspection, maybe some journaling, some different thought exercises, perhaps.
Oh, a number of things. Yes. I'm sorry, I don't know quite why the video keeps turning itself off. There we go. Yes, a number of different things. Obviously, it involves diet, hydration, exercise, relaxation, breathing, time to spend with yourself. But yes, for the emotional side, very much a case, I would suggest a number of journals, actually, usually. It's good to have a journal for gratitude and acceptance. So at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, when you're feeling low, if you start the day or finish the day, or ideally both, with a whole list of all the things that are wonderful in your life that you'll really appreciate, and that can be small things like, or just things we take for granted, like running water or a roof over our head or a food on the table, those sort of things, and lots and lots. Once you get going, there's lots. So it can be really helpful to make a list of that. That can really lift the mood and put things in perspective. It can be useful to have a journal for insights. So if you're pondering on something and you get that light bulb moment, then it's great to put that down. You make a connection. So then you can go back and see how because what happens is, as we start to grow and understand things, you absorb them, they become part of you. And it's very difficult then to look back sometimes at yourself. Other people can see it more and say, well, I've moved on. I was in that place and now I'm in this place. But if you have a journal which has your insights, it can be really helpful to show you how far you've come and to reinforce, because sometimes we forget things that we've realized as well. But and this wouldn't be so much a journal. This would be more like pieces of scrap paper. It can be really helpful when those emotions are incredibly strong, to write out the emotion or speak it out or letter write or whatever. But just say, for example, here, to write out, I am upset because, and then just write and write and write and write and write. You don't worry about grammar, you don't worry about spelling, you don't worry about expletives, you don't even worry if it's legible, because you're going to write it out and then you shred it, bin it, burn it, you get rid of it. And what you're doing on the cellular level, of course, going back to the cells, is you're clearing that emotion out of the cells. So you're making a space for something new to come in. And if we're always just going, often think it's a bit outdated now, this technology, but I think it like a tape loop that goes around in your head. You go over and over the same thing. That can help break that. And obviously, if you break that and make some space, then you've got something to work with. You've got a bit of room to maneuver and bring new things in.
What you're talking about brings to mind for me this idea of somatically storing emotions. When I was in massage therapy school and acupuncture school, we were taught that while we were providing a treatment for someone, we could work on specific muscle groups or something, accessing the tissue, working with the tissue. And by working with this tissue, all of a sudden, the patient may go into an emotional release.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing is accessing that area where the energy of the emotion was stored. And that to me is fascinating, that our bodies can store our emotions in our tissue, in our cells. So by working with you and starting to treat yourself on a cellular level, you can begin to release the energy of those emotions and move forward out of trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's incredible, but it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. It doesn't really matter where you start, whether you're visiting a therapist or whether you're changing your diet or whatever. It's all going to work together. So, for example, if somebody visited you and you worked on their liver and they released some rage or frustration or whatever, then their blood's going to be cleaner, they're going to feel healthier. And so it all works in together. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Sarah, I'm going to ask you the question I ask all my guests. And that is, what is your definition of Foxy? And what does Foxy and being Foxy mean to you?
Well, it's not going to be a big surprise, is it, if I say, to me, somebody who's Foxy is somebody who's really looking after themselves. Yeah, because that makes them, if somebody's looking after themselves, you can tell, can't you, as soon as you meet them. So they're strong, they're confident, and in a feminine way. It's not, but and they have purpose. So it all begins with the self-care. So somebody who's Foxy is somebody who's really got their act together, not in an ego sense, but in a very balanced self-care, self-respecting way. Yeah.
And who in your mind embodies foxiness?
Oh, goodness me. Oh, now I'm not sure. Not anybody that I could name that you would know in terms of celebrity. Is that what you're thinking?
Celebrities, or even in your own personal life. This is just your.
Oh, well, okay. There's a whole number of people, but certainly somebody who I greatly respect. Well, a few people, but one in particular is somebody called Joe LaRose, who I mention in the book and have quoted, and who does amazing work with people. So she's the Foxy lady. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure she appreciates you. And I will tell you right now, just within chatting with you, I can definitely say you, Sarah, are a Foxy lady.
Well, thank you. I've gone quite pink.
So how can people find out more about your work? If they want to work with you or find your book, how do they get that information?
Well, there's lots of different ways. So my name is Sara Gibbons. This is the book. I have the book here. I don't know if you can see it, called Rise Again After Divorce. So if people want to get the book, the easiest way to do it is to go to their Amazon account and type my name in, Saranoh, Gibbons, Gibbons. So that's one way. Of course, there's my website as well, helpyourselves.com. Where I have a private Facebook group, a closed Facebook group for people who want support through divorce. some beautiful people in there. So you can find that in Facebook, and that's called Divorce Be Gone, Let's Move On. Help Yourselves is on Twitter and Instagram, and on Facebook as well. So a number of different ways.
Excellent. Well, I will get those links and I will put them on our show notes page. And that way folks can just, if they're listening right on the getfoxyshow.com, they can go right to that page, find all those links, and they will be right there for them.
Lovely. Thank you.
We are getting close to bumping up on time here, Sara, but I want to ask you one last question, and that is, what would be the one piece of advice you could give to a listener who is coming out of just a wicked divorce and is just lost that foxiness? What's the one piece of advice that you would give them to help them start that upward spiral again?
I would say there is always a choice, even though people might feel that they're trapped, there is always a way out. Now, it might mean taking a way out that seems the lesser of two evils, but there is always a way out. And so the thing is that nobody can, while you're in the depths of despair, you have to be at the point of reaching out, because nobody can, I don't know if you've ever spoken to anybody or tried to talk to somebody who's severely depressed. You can't get that connection. You can sit with them, you can be with them, you can be compassionate, but you can't actually reach them. So what I would say to somebody who is really at that point is that if they can reach out for support and know that there is always a choice. And it's like I said before, if we take that first step, the support is there. So it might mean that you have support from different areas to where you expected. Sometimes, and quite often actually, friendship groups change, and sometimes quite dramatically, after a relationship breakup for all sorts of reasons. But if you can make that step, that first step of looking after yourself or reaching out for support, then that will start that spiral going. But if the scales are tipping down, it can be incredibly hard. So it's like sometimes you have to let people just go down until they're ready to say, I've had enough of this, and then they go. So when you've had enough, the support is absolutely there for you. And as I say, from my own experience of having been absolutely in that pit of despair to the point, well, to a very, very low point, I know that as soon as you start to move and say, I've had enough, there's got to be another way, let's just have a look and see what there is that can support me, then everything can start to change. And it can change quite fast as well.
Excellent. Ladies, there you have it. If you are at that point where you just, that's enough, I need to reach out, there are plenty of places to reach out. Sara is definitely one of those places. So Sara, thank you so much for taking the time today. I just want to honor you and thank you for helping bring more light and joy and healing trauma in this world. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me and for providing a platform for people to find out about how they can help themselves. So thank you, Terry.